disgrace. That guy deliberately let that fall out of his pocket. But instead of going out and saying something, the neighbor planned his revenge. That night, he took his wastepaper basket and went to the man's house. Later, when he was picking up the papers which had been dumped on his porch, he found the important piece of paper that he had lost. He thought that his neighbor had not only picked his pocket, but had the cheek to mess up his doorway with rubbish. Instead, he started plotting his revenge. That night, he phoned a farmer to make an order of 10 pigs and 100 ducks. Of course, the next day, his neighbor had quite a bit of trouble trying to rid himself of so many animals and their accompanying pong. Sure that this had been a dastardly trick pulled by his neighbor, he again started planning his revenge. And so it went on. They continued trying to get their own back on each other, and each time their acts of revenge got bigger and more ridiculous. The dropping of that single piece of paper ended up invoking a rock band, a fire siren, and the driving of a lorry into a garden fence. They even had the throwing of a hail of stones at windows, the firing of a cannon, and finally the dropping of a bomb which destroyed both men's houses. Both ended up in a hospital and had to spend quite some time sharing a room there. At first they refused to speak to each other, but one day, tired of the silence, they got to talking. As time passed, they became friends, until one day they finally dared discuss the piece of paper incident. They realized that it had all been a misunderstanding, and that if they had talked to each other on the first occasion, then none of this would have happened. Even better, they would still have their houses. However, in the end, the fact that they were talking and had become friends helped them greatly to recover from their wounds. They worked together to rebuild their houses, turning their rivalry into a strong friendship. From that day on, they learned the importance of communication and friendship. And they promised to always talk things out instead of letting misunderstandings lead to silly troubles. From that day on, they shared many happy moments, proving that friendship is stronger than any silly fight. And so, the Bad Neighbours became the best of friends, living happily ever after. They created a happy neighborhood where everyone got along, and that piece of paper was never thought of again. And every time they saw a piece of paper, they remembered their funny adventure and how it brought them together. Together, they made their neighborhood a brighter place, filled with laughter, kindness, and friendship. And so, the two men and their families lived happily ever after, spreading joy wherever they went. They knew that as long as they communicated and cared for each other, their friendship would last forever. And every night, they would gather together, sharing stories and laughter under the beautiful stars.